Pei Jian, in order to appease his bright moon, locked me in the basement for a whole day and night. Then the electrical wires short-circuited, igniting a massive fire, and I suffocated to death inside. Before I died, I saw a young man. He held up a bench, frantically smashing the door lock, rushing toward me. The flames burned his clothes, but he didn't care at all. Who was he? I don't remember anything. I only know that, in the end, I died in his arms. After I died, my soul lingered beside the young man. The fire burned fiercer and fiercer, but he held me tightly, not moving an inch. I couldn't help but shake him and scream at him, "Run away quickly. Do you want to stay here and die?" But I also knew that he couldn't hear the screams of a ghost like me. Until the fire trucks roared in, and he was carried out by a dozen firefighters. Finally, I left that cursed room. Outside, the sunlight was bright, and the weather was good. I saw Pei Jian, pacing nervously outside the villa. He grabbed someone and asked, "Has the girl in the basement been rescued yet?" He still didn't know I was dead. Look at him, the man I've loved for 10 years. Even if I were burned to ashes, he wouldn't dare rush in to save me. My body was still being held by that man. Without looking at anyone, he walked straight to a black car. He opened the door and placed me in the passenger seat. He even took the trouble to fasten my seatbelt. Then the car suddenly sped out and left the villa. The young man fled with the dead girl, like a scene from a movie. We left the city. The scenery outside gradually changed to fields, villages, and then beaches. He had reached the sea. Desolate and empty, it was an untouched beach. Finally, the car came to a stop. He carried me out of the car, slowly walked toward the deep abyss of the sea, and gradually sank to the bottom with me. He said, "Jianghe, I am Linju. Do you remember me? Are you trying to confess? Confess. Confess." I opened my eyes and found myself standing in a high school classroom, surrounded by classmates aged 16 or 17. A girl pushed me. "Jianghe, is that a love letter in your hand?" A dry, crumpled piece of paper was in my hand, its envelope bearing the delicate words, "To Pei Jian." I had traveled back to my high school days, the day I confessed my feelings to Pei Jian. It was Friday afternoon, almost time for school to let out. There were 5 minutes left before Pei Jian entered the classroom. I handed him the love letter in front of everyone. What did he say then? He said, "I'm truly sorry, but I'm not thinking about romance right now." No. I shook my head. "You've misunderstood." At that moment, Pei Jian walked in from the classroom door. Someone called out to him, "Pei Jian, Jianghe is looking for you." A tone of amusement. I tore the paper in half, calmly saying, "It's nothing, everyone is just joking." After saying that, I threw the torn paper into the trash can. Pei Jian stared at my face for a long time. Without saying anything, he returned to his seat. The crowd gathered around to watch, letting out bored sighs. "Oh, I thought there would be some fun. Let's disperse, let's disperse." I flipped through my book at my seat. It was almost time for class to end, and everyone was excitedly packing up their bags. But I still felt like there was something lingering. Perhaps it wasn't important to me at the time, so it was buried in the river of my memories. Until the homeroom teacher walked in, I suddenly snapped out of it. It was him. The students saw the homeroom teacher enter and immediately began to murmur in complaint, "Oh, it's already this late, we should be dismissed." The homeroom teacher frowned. Our school was a private high school, regarded as elite and aristocratic education, where the students were either wealthy or noble, and sometimes very difficult to manage. The homeroom teacher waved to the outside, "Come in." He walked in from the classroom door. Linju. I remembered. He was a transfer student, moving to our school from another city to attend 11th grade. He always wore a pristine white uniform, and his backpack was an old-fashioned type with straps, completely different from the luxurious style of the others in the class. Perhaps because of this, he rarely spoke to others and was often isolated. He always sat alone in the back row, holding a practice book. But his grades were excellent, and he was at the top of his class, never falling out of the top 3 in his grade, especially in math and physics, where he almost always got full marks. Linju bowed to the class and introduced himself. My name is Linju. Water can carry a boat, but it can also overturn it. I transferred here from a city. The class teacher nodded. He pointed to a seat at the back and said, "Go sit there." So Linju carried his backpack, slowly walked through the classroom, and sat behind me. He slowly took out his textbook and placed it neatly on the desk. There was a hint of unease, but also a touch of innocence. But fortunately, at 17, we still had time, still had the chance to start over. The class teacher left, and the classroom became noisy again. Everyone turned their heads, curiously sizing up Linju. The troublemaker Fu Sheng, who refused to study in class, walked over and asked him, "A city? The coal mining city next door? My family also does business with that place. What's your father's name? Maybe my parents know him." Linju clenched his fingers, feeling a bit flustered. He hesitated. "My father doesn't do business. He's just. He's not a coal miner, is he?" Fu Sheng interrupted him, bursting into laughter. Many people here, even teenagers, had already learned to flatter the powerful and look down on the poor, despising the poor and loving the rich. Many people found this interesting and gathered around to watch. Therefore, Fu Sheng became even more pleased with himself. He took Linju's book, held it under his nose, and sniffed. "It really does smell like coal." Ha 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 ha. The laughter was truly disgusting. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, grabbed a cup of water, and splashed it on his head. "Is your nose a dog's nose, classmate Fu Sheng?" Fu Sheng was soaked by the water I threw at him, and he looked at me with embarrassment turned to anger. He rolled up his sleeves and glared at me fiercely. "Jianghe, do you want to die?" "I'm sorry, I really am dead." Perhaps in high school, Jianghe was always shy and reserved, but after living for 28 years, Jianghe was no longer like that. I laughed. "That's right, I want to die." In the end, there was no fight. Pei Jian walked over, furrowing his brows at me. "What's wrong with you today? Go home." Pei Jian was the class monitor, and the Pei family was the most powerful family in B City. Fu Sheng naturally wouldn't cause trouble for him. But when I saw him, I could only think of the raging fire. I said, "From now on, we won't go home together anymore. After school, I have to stay behind to prepare for the college entrance exam." Pei Jian snorted. He looked at me in confusion. "Jianghe, what are you crazy about?" I didn't want to see this crazy person anymore. I pointed to the classroom door. "Can you please not disturb my studies, class monitor? The class beauty, He Meng from the neighboring class, is still waiting for you at the door." I, Pei Jian, and He Meng grew up together. Our parents collaborated in business and frequently interacted in daily life. I used to think that Pei Jian was really good to me. He would call me Xiaohe. In fact, he only saw me as a little sister. The person he liked was always He Meng. He Meng stood at the door, waving at us. "Brother Pei, what are you and Jianghe talking about? Are you two going?" Pei Jian glanced at me again. He tapped my desk with his finger. "If you really can't handle physics, I can tutor you a bit over the weekend." Then he picked up his backpack and walked toward He Meng. In the end, only 2 of us remained in the classroom, me and Linju. The wall clock in the classroom ticked away. Behind me, I heard the sound of Linju's pen scratching on paper. My impression of him was that he was always a serious, studious top student. But, "Linju, what do I look like to you?" I leaned on the chair, carefully observing him. His eyebrows, eyes, and mouth gradually matched the man who had held me in the sea of fire. He said, "Jianghe, I'm Linju. Do you remember me?" Perhaps I was staring too intently. Linju noticed something was off. He looked up, surprised, touched his chin, and asked carefully, "Is there something on my face?" I shook my head and hurriedly said, "No, no." How embarrassing. To break the awkward, suffocating atmosphere, I took a physics workbook from my desk, flipped to a page, and placed it in front of Linju. "Can you help me explain this question?" Seeing the question, Linju's mood immediately lightened. He glanced at it and said, "Yeah, this question isn't actually that difficult. I can't even answer simple questions. My physics is terrible. Every time I take a test, it drags down my grades severely." He took out 2 sheets of scratch paper and wrote down 2 formulas. "It's like this, and like this." Then he asked me, "Do you understand?" I was dumbfounded. I let out a prolonged ah. He smiled and said, "If not, I'll help you review the basics." Linju probably noticed my true level through my confused eyes. He closed the book, took out the textbook, flipped to the beginning, and gently said, "Let's review from the first chapter." I felt that Linju's tutoring skills were far better than those of my rigid high school physics teacher. They were also much better than Pei Jian's. No doubt about it, in my previous life, I had always followed Pei Jian around, holding all sorts of flashy, colorful notebooks with the wrong problems, bothering him. "Pei Jian, can you help me with the kinetic energy theorem?" "Pei Jian, why can't I solve the last math problem?" "Pei Jian. It's so annoying." No wonder he always gave me a cold glance. "Are you stupid, Jianghe? You don't know how to do anything." Until the school security guard knocked on the door, angrily standing at the classroom door and shouting at me and Linju, "What are you two doing here studying at night? Why haven't you gone home yet? Do you want me to call your parents?" Linju and I realized it was almost 8 o'clock. The school was about to lock the doors. So I quickly packed my bag, apologized, and ran outside. I ran straight to the school gate, where a car honked its horn and stopped beside me. The driver rolled down the window and called out to me, "Xiao He." It was our family driver, Uncle Zhang. He saw that it was late and I still hadn't come home, so he drove over to pick me up. "Get in the car quickly, your mother is waiting for you at home to eat dinner." Uncle Zhang glared at me, his tone not very pleasant. I hurriedly opened the car door and glanced back at Linju. "Linju, it's so late, do you need us to take you home?" "No need. My house is very far away, in the western suburbs, and it's not convenient to get there." He showed a grimace and a forced smile. "Besides, there are buses at this hour, which are very convenient." Linju waved at me and ran toward the bus stop. A city is very far away, and the bus takes over an hour. I've only been there once. The area is still undeveloped, with old houses and shanties everywhere, and trash piled up on the ground. I called out to him, "Linju." He turned his head. I asked him, "Do you know my name?" Under the streetlight, his face was gently flushed. I said, "My name is Jianghe." "You must remember it well." Although I had time traveled, my high school cultural knowledge hadn't come with me at all. This was a very tragic situation. Moreover, I was an average student with an ordinary IQ, so I had no choice but to spend my weekends lying on the table reading high school textbooks. Almost every line was fully annotated. Just as I was thinking about this knowledge, the phone rang, startling me. Of course, it was He Meng. She sent me a photo on WeChat. The library self-study room, a few books, and 2 cups of milk tea on the table. She looked annoyed. "Xiao He, Brother Pei is coming here to study this weekend, and I'm not even a student in the cultural studies department, it's so boring. Do you want to come here?" He Meng is a dance student. Pei Jian is really talented. I never thought his brain was so ordinary before, yet he's dating at the library. I simply replied with 2 words, "Not going." She didn't respond either. I continued reading. After a while, my mind felt like it was wrapped in a pile of glue. I really missed that afternoon when Linju taught me. It was so clear and easy to understand. I opened my phone, downloaded the updated information, found Linju's phone number, and called him. He answered quickly. I said, "Classmate Lin? Jianghe?" He hesitated to ask. I burst into laughter. "I'm doing my homework, and I suddenly thought of you. Am I bothering you?" We talked for a long time. We discussed which teacher was the strictest, who was the most sycophantic, and some school rumors that had been circulating for 800 years but which Linju had never heard of. He kept agreeing with me, occasionally joining in with exaggerated exclamations. It fully satisfied my desire to tell stories. This young man is truly very gentle. But why can't I remember where I met him before? After chatting for a while, we hung up. I casually opened my friends list and scrolled through it. I discovered that Pei Jian had posted something for the first time. Today, I reviewed some physics knowledge and learned a lot. The image was a corner of a physics textbook. There were a bunch of likes, and many classmates commented back. The class monitor pulled me aside, saying, "Physics is really hard, it's killing me." What the heck? Why is the top student being so serious? Pei Jian, you've already scored 200 points, please stop studying. Before Linju transferred to our class, Pei Jian's grades were always first, more than 10 points ahead of second place. When Linju arrived, his position began to waver. Their test scores were tied. The first and second positions were shared between them. Other students always hoped to witness the fierce competition between the two academic geniuses. But unfortunately, in my impression, Pei Jian and Linju probably didn't exchange more than 10 sentences. The two of them weren't really acquainted. Actually, I felt quite embarrassed for bothering Linju for so long. So that evening, I went into the kitchen to gather some ingredients and baked a box of cookies to give to Linju. I used to play with this toy all the time. I even brought the cookies I had experimented with for Pei Jian to try. But in my previous life, I once went to his company's office and accidentally saw the cookies I had given him in a drawer. I only ate one piece, leaving the rest untouched, some of which had even molded. I just found out that he actually doesn't like the things I give him. My mother heard the sound and came down to the kitchen to check on me. Wasting food again. My mother frowned. Someone like Pei Jian basically doesn't like to eat this. Can you switch to something else? Who said I gave it to Pei Jian? I gave it to a new classmate. I put the cookies back in the box, lifted my head proudly, and replied loudly. That's determination. My mother looked at me in surprise, shaking her head in admiration at my change in attitude. During the break the next day, I turned around and placed the cookies on the table. He carefully opened the box, and his eyes lit up in an instant. Surprise, joy, and a touch of uncertainty. He said, "Classmate Jianghe, you're the first person to make cookies for me to eat." It felt amazing to have my hard work recognized. Just then, Pei Jian emerged from the teacher's office, holding a stack of exam papers. He happened to walk past our row, suddenly stopped, looked at us for a moment, and for some reason said, "Did you make cookies?" Huh? This guy appeared out of nowhere, startling both me and Linju. Pei Jian stared at the box of cookies for a long time, then oddly said, "Jianghe, you said you wouldn't just give food to others." I scratched my head. Back in high school, when I was pursuing Pei Jian, I think I did say that. Pei Jian, besides you, no one else should expect to eat the cookies Jianghe made by hand. Oh, love, why must you expose me? I felt uneasy and lowered my head, not wanting to pay attention to him. Pei Jian saw that I didn't want to talk to him, so he went to chat with Linju. I heard you're not bad at physics? He placed the exam paper on the desk, as if casually picking a topic to ask about. Linju shook his head and replied modestly, "No, just average." No need to be so modest. Pei Jian pulled out a sheet from the pile of exams and handed it to Linju, 98 points, that's very high. This is the exam you took when you transferred schools. I just went to the office to pick up the exam papers and brought this one back for you. I followed along to look, and except for the last question, which was deducted 2 points, the rest were all perfect scores. Pei Jian pointed to the deducted points and said, "This is the physics exam question. Think about it carefully." In his previous life, Pei Jian had taken private tutoring with an outside teacher to prepare for the physics exam, eventually winning an award and earning extra points on his high school graduation exam. When he saw me listening seriously, he tapped my head. "Jianghe, do you understand what I'm saying?" I glared at Pei Jian angrily. "Don't underestimate others. Do you really think I won't improve?" He laughed, but there was a hint of gentleness in his smile. "Why didn't you come to the library over the weekend? Didn't I say I'd give you a lesson?" This was the first time I'd heard him say something like that. But I shook my head. "I'll just ask Linju. He's sitting right behind me." Pei Jian's expression froze. He glanced at me, then glanced at Linju, said nothing more, and coldly took his exam paper and left. After taking 2 steps, he turned around and said indifferently to me, "Jianghe, next Saturday, Meng is throwing a party. You should at least show up to save face, right?" Meng's celebration party was a turning point that changed everything. Meng was an art student, so the academic requirements weren't high. As long as she passed the art exam and her grades weren't too bad, she could get in. In her previous life, she had already surpassed the average person. Several renowned dance schools had sent her invitations. This was an extremely joyful occasion. Meng's father organized a banquet at a 5-star hotel and even specially allowed her to go out and play with her friends. The prerequisite was that she couldn't stay out overnight. It wasn't surprising that her father made such a request, as she usually went out to play a lot. She has friends from all walks of life. Meng rented a luxurious room at a KTV, and I also participated in it. There were classmates from our school, as well as some friends from her art class outside of school. The atmosphere was extremely lively. Pei Jian and Meng were surrounded in the middle. The two were being urged to sing a duet together. Near dawn, my mother called me on video chat. At that moment, Meng was beside me and saw the caller's name. She said, "My mother said she went shopping with your mother today, and now she's probably still at your house playing mahjong. My cell phone is turned off, so don't answer it. She must be calling me through you. But I'm a good girl." In the end, I still answered the phone. Sure enough, there were 2 people on the other end. My mother and Meng's mother. Meng's mother's voice was particularly loud. "What are you kids doing over there that's so noisy? Meng, don't you see what time it is now? Are you coming home? Tell me where you are, and I'll call the Jiang family's driver to pick you up." Meng glared at her accusingly. "Mom, you're so annoying. I've finished my exam. Let me stay out all night. Will I lose any flesh from my body?" Both of them were stubborn. After a long commotion, Meng's mother finally said, "If you don't come home tonight, don't expect to receive your allowance next month." Meng was the little rich girl at school, receiving 5,000 yuan in allowance every month. This statement immediately silenced Meng. She cursed under her breath and hung up the phone, declaring that her night of fun was officially over. After that, Pei Jian took us downstairs and waited with us in the lobby for Uncle Zhang to arrive in his car. During this time, Meng didn't say a single word to Pei Jian. She was a bit angry. When she called her mother, she kept signaling to Pei Jian, hoping he could go out and say a few words on her behalf, even if it was just to reassure her aunt that she would come to take care of Meng tonight. That's fine. Meng's mother really liked Pei Jian and even tried to matchmake the 2 of them. If Pei Jian had gone out to talk, perhaps her aunt would have agreed to Meng's request. But that night, she remained cold and indifferent to Meng's pleas. As a result, Meng was unable to defy her mother and could only return home with me. "It's all your fault. She stomped her feet and gritted her teeth. Neither of you are any good, you're so annoying. That night, on the way back, an accident occurred. Afterward, the traffic police concluded that Uncle Zhang, our family's driver, had been driving under the influence of alcohol and was solely responsible. He Meng and I were hospitalized for half a month. She was more severely injured than I was, with ligament damage in her leg, preventing her from dancing for several years. He Meng's mother wept bitterly by her hospital bed. She confronted Mr. Zhang, demanding that he take responsibility for her daughter's injuries. Mr. Zhang eventually faced legal consequences and compensated the family financially. But what good did that do? The one thing the He family didn't lack was money. That was a turning point. If that car accident hadn't happened, He Meng would have stayed in the country, and the three of us would still be together like we were in high school. A few years later, perhaps Pei Jian would be with Meng. Perhaps I would be very sad, but I would only cry for a while, still bless them, and then go find my own path in life. But that accident changed everything. He Meng gave up the dance academy and went abroad to study at an art school. Pei Jian and I went to the same city to attend university, and we would occasionally meet up. He knew I had a crush on him, but the thing he said most often was, "Jiang He, don't you feel like you've made Meng desperate?" Both of us felt guilty. He would fly across half the country to buy Macau almond cakes for Meng to send abroad. He would also set an alarm clock to compete for tickets to a show by Jay Chou because she wanted to watch the performance, and go with her to see her idol perform. As for holiday gifts, birthdays, and annual anniversaries, he never missed a single one. After Meng lived abroad for a few years, she returned to the country. Pei Jian found his old friend and organized a celebration for her. The chaos lasted until dawn. After singing a song, He Meng held the microphone and suddenly said to me, "Jiang He, now that you've graduated for so many years, can your mother still control whether you come home at night?" In that moment, the atmosphere suddenly fell silent. I knew she had never forgiven me. Pei Jian reluctantly called out to her, "Meng. Brother Pei, don't interrupt me." Meng, drunk, spoke defiantly, "Isn't Jiang He a good girl? Anyway, she can't hang out with us, so why don't we lock her up alone? She'll be happier in that small room." She hugged Pei Jian's arm, her voice whiny. I couldn't say a word. I wanted to argue, but I always felt like I owed her. Pei Jian sighed. He glanced at me, took out the key, and locked me in the basement with He Meng. He Meng tapped on the basement door and laughed loudly, "Jiang He, wait until I finish organizing the party, and I'll open the door for you." I don't know why her party lasted so long. All I know is that the fire was raging. The tragedy of my past life, after coming here, I won't let it happen again. I know, stopping He Meng from celebrating her exam success is almost impossible. I chose not to join. If I don't go, Uncle Zhang, the driver, won't come to pick us up either. On Saturday night, Pei Jian called me. "When are you coming?" It was very noisy on the other end, and I had to strain to hear clearly. "I'm not going, I have to do my homework," I said. "It's up to you." Pei Jian remained silent for a moment before coldly replying. I hung up the phone, feeling that this time, my reputation as a diligent, hard-working bookworm had been fully established. Near dawn, I went downstairs to take a quick look. Uncle Zhang was in the kitchen video chatting with an old army buddy, chatting casually while drinking and eating. He noticed me and waved his hand, "Xiao He, why can't you sleep?" I opened my mouth, wanting to say something but stopped. Finally, I said, "Uncle Zhang, you're getting older. You should drink less in the future." In the living room, the ladies were so engrossed in mahjong that they had forgotten about the world. He Meng's mother had just won a round, her luck was truly excellent. She looked at her watch and suddenly remembered something. "Oh no, Meng went out tonight, I wonder if she's back yet, I should call her." The result was that the phone was turned off. She called again, but still couldn't get through. Her sister advised her, "Sister, it's your turn to be the dealer, you can't just run off as soon as you win money." "That's not right." He Meng's mother couldn't keep calling either. While shuffling the cards, she said, "Listening to you all, how can I not run away?" I was lying on the bed in the bedroom, watching the time on the wall clock ticking away. It was peaceful and quiet outside. Just like any other ordinary night. I gradually drifted off to sleep. The next day, my mother woke me up. "Jiang, come downstairs for breakfast." It was only 8 o'clock. I groggily reached for my mobile phone from the bedside table, opened the friends group, and started scrolling. A classmate sent a message. "The school beauty and the top student, a perfect match?" The photo showed Pei Jian and He Meng. Both were leaning against the sofa, their eyes closed in sleep, with He Meng's head gently resting on Pei Jian's shoulder. It seemed the party had gone on too late, and everyone was exhausted by the end. Someone sensed something fishy and took a photo of the two of them, then posted it online. Below were many teasing comments. I've always felt that these two were unusual. The top duo of our school. Seeing this photo, I immediately woke up. I sat up strongly from the bed. There was no car accident, He Meng did not leave the celebration party, everything was fine. Then he commented, "That's great." Soon after, he clicked on refresh, and the post disappeared. Pei Jian called me again. "Jiang He." He couldn't understand and said, "Everyone played too well last night. I went to sleep halfway through and didn't play with them anymore." Why are you telling me this?" He smiled, "I thought you would go. If I knew you weren't going, I wouldn't have gone either." I scratched my nose, not knowing how to continue. The two of us fell silent for a moment. I said, "If there's nothing else, I'm going to have breakfast." He nodded, "See you at school tomorrow." Although the photos in the group chat had been deleted, the scandal spread quickly. Especially since many classmates had attended Meng's party that day. On Monday, when I went to school, I could feel everyone quietly discussing the gossip. But I didn't join in. Because in a few days, the monthly exam results would be released. This was the first important exam Linju had taken since transferring to the school. When the class teacher announced the rankings, he paused for a moment. "This time, our class has a dark horse. No mistake, competition leads to progress." He paused, "Linju, first place." The class erupted in excitement. This was the first time Pei Jian, who had always been at the top of the class, was overtaken. "Linju, was that the transferred student Linju? He doesn't even talk to us. The college entrance exam is coming up, and there's another top student." Even though I knew how talented Linju was, it couldn't dampen my excitement. I turned around, excitedly stretching out my claws and ruffling Linju's hair. "Linju. You're so talented." I messed up Linju's hair. He didn't get angry, but just smiled gently. My deskmate couldn't stand it and poked me with her elbow. "Jiang He, keep your voice down." She winked at me, "Can't you see that the class monitor is unhappy?" I followed her gaze and looked over to the other side. I followed my deskmate's gaze. Pei Jian was sitting against the wall, turning his head to watch me and Linju play around. His lips were pressed into a thin line, his eyes as cold as ice, his entire body frozen like a sculpture. I immediately startled. I sighed at my lack of empathy. Pei Jian had been at the top of the class for nearly 3 years, and suddenly came in second in the exam. Who wouldn't feel upset? I was still smiling brightly here, wasn't that like rubbing salt into someone else's wound? I cleared my throat twice. Be a little more humble. After a long while, Pei Jian's gaze finally shifted away from me. I quickly exhaled in relief. Thanks to Linju's tutoring, my grades had improved significantly. Therefore, every Friday after school, I voluntarily studied with him for 2 hours of self-study, gradually becoming proficient in tutoring. But unexpectedly, Pei Jian also stayed behind. As soon as the school bell rang, he Shermang rushed to our classroom door. "Bui, let's go home." She waved at Pei Jian as she had before. Pei Jian didn't go outside either, nor did he pack his bag. He stayed at his seat and said to He Shermang, "You go home first, I'll stay and study for a while before leaving." As soon as he said this, the students who hadn't left yet all turned their heads. "Class monitor, you don't need to be so serious, do you? You've already had your admission points reduced. You really want to kill us." Because he won the Olympics, Pei Jian was directly granted a 60-point reduction in admission points. Even if he didn't perform at his best on the exam, he would absolutely not fall below the admission score of his ideal school. Pei Jian ignored them. Once everyone had left, he directly grabbed his books and sat down next to my seat. I was confused, "Huh?" Pei Jian replied matter-of-factly, "Your seat is closer to Linju, so it's convenient for the two of us to discuss the problem." This left me at a loss for words. Should I make way for two outstanding students like you? Before I could speak, Pei Jian actually took out a problem and discussed it with Linju. "Classmate Linju, do you have a simpler way to solve this problem? I feel like I'm overcomplicating it." I looked at it, and it was exactly the problem I had gotten wrong. Therefore, I did not want to chase Pei Jian away, so I obediently stayed on the sidelines, keeping quiet and listening to the two great scholars discuss their academic experiences. I was like a small shrimp sitting back and reaping the benefits. After a whole night of self-study, I felt like every cell in my brain was about to explode. Pei Jian and Linju's approaches to solving problems often differed, so their clashes often led to new insights. By nearly 8 o'clock, Pei Jian took out his books and tapped my head, "Jianghe, it's time to go home." I finally snapped out of my daze and regained my senses. "Aha, let's go." Since I had told my mother that I would stay at school for a while after school on Friday, she had arranged for Uncle Zhang to pick me up 2 hours later. Linju insisted on taking the bus home by himself and never let me drive him. But this time, there was also Pei Jian. He's also from a wealthy family, but his family doesn't send a driver to pick him up. Pei Jian scratched his nose, looking at me without a trace of shame. "Let Uncle Zhang take me home." Before, when the three of us got out of school, didn't our families take turns sending cars to pick us up? I looked at him disdainfully. "Bui, the class monitor, can't you learn from your classmate Linju and take the bus home?" Pei Jian saw the mocking look in my eyes and retorted. "Or should I call your mother and tell her that you left me at the school gate tonight, not caring whether I live or die?" I was truly impressed. The two of us sat in the back row. Mr. Zhang drove silently in front, and for a moment, I felt that Pei Jian and I had nothing to say. The city streets receded outside the car window. Suddenly, Pei Jian asked me, "Jianghe, there are only a few months left before the high school graduation exam. Have you thought about where you want to study?" These words served as a reminder to me. I should also consider volunteering. I want to go south, to see the sea. However, in my previous life, because Pei Jian chose a university in the north, I also longed to go north. It's not that the city is bad, it's just not suitable for me. Pei Jian saw that I wasn't saying anything, so he spoke softly again, "Think it over and tell me." He took a deep breath, as if making up his mind, and looked at me. "I want to go to a city with you to read books." I still didn't respond. "The university you want to apply to hasn't been decided yet?" I asked back. The top-tier university has lowered its admission requirements. More importantly, that school has a lot of connections and resources from the Pei family. Most of the Pei family's friends and relatives graduated from there, so he really has no reason to change his current university goal. He shook his head. He didn't answer my question, just repeated, "Jianghe, we have to live in the same city in the future." I have no interest in living in the same city as Pei Jian. In the evening, I lay in bed and sent a WeChat message to Linju. "Classmate Linju, have you decided which school you want to apply to yet?" After sending it, I felt my question was meaningless. Based on Linju's scores, he wouldn't be able to get into any school he wanted. Linju replied very quickly. I haven't decided yet, what about you? I want to go somewhere warm where I can see the sea. I imagined it as I typed. Coincidentally, so do I. This guy is clearly copying me. In my previous life, I studied hard in high school, but mainly just to be able to go to the same place as Pei Jian. This time, I want to strive for myself. In the semester after high school, the atmosphere in the classroom gradually became more serious. The countdown to the college entrance exam was putting pressure on everyone. Even private high schools couldn't escape this. The principal organized a pre-college entrance exam rally and invited the top students of the school to the stage to speak about their studies. Nothing surprising happened. Of course, Pei Jian and Linju, the top students, were both elected as student representatives. I clearly remember how boring that rally was. I endured it until Pei Jian took the stage. After listening to him speak clearly, I couldn't stand it anymore, so I sneaked out of the auditorium and went for a walk on the sports field. I have no recollection of Linju's speech. Perhaps it was at the very end, and I missed it. Thinking about it now, it's a bit regrettable. Fortunately, I have the opportunity to do it again. This time, I was particularly determined to wait for Linju to come on stage. But by the time Pei Jian finished speaking, many people had already come out from behind, and I still didn't see Linju. As soon as the student union organizer walked by, I grabbed his arm and asked, "Classmate, why isn't Linju from our class coming on stage?" "I haven't seen him either." The man frowned and said in an unpleasant tone, "I called him, but he didn't answer. The order of appearance on stage has already been arranged. He's directly disrupting us. What's going on?" At that moment, I suddenly realized that something might have happened. I suddenly stood up and ran out of the large auditorium. Where could he be? I took out my mobile phone and called Linju. Just as the student union had said, I called multiple times but received no response. In such a large school, I felt like a headless fly, running aimlessly between the academic buildings. While continuing to dial Linju's number in vain, I tried to reassure myself that he wasn't a primary school student, so he must be okay. Until I ran to the sports field on the other side, suddenly, memories flooded into my mind. I figured it out. In my previous life, after listening to Pei Jian's speech, I sneaked out of the auditorium and went for a walk. When I reached this sports field, I heard an odd commotion. Driven by curiosity, I walked over to the window and saw several classmates surrounding a teenager inside the classroom, relentlessly punching and kicking him. They were cursing him with foul language. At that moment, for some reason, my sense of justice flared up. I pushed the door open. I pulled the boy out of the crowd. "If you bully others again, I'll tell the teacher." I even angrily left that statement behind. Now that I think about it, that person was Linju. I ran like crazy. I ran all the way to the stadium and suddenly broke through the main gate. The scene before me was exactly like in my previous life. Linju was surrounded in the middle, with several thugs from our class, including Fu Sheng, standing beside him. "Isn't your family a coal miner? Is being smart so impressive? You want to go on stage and give a speech? I won't let you. I hate students like you who boast about their intelligence. What kind of ability do you have?" After getting to know Linju for a long time, I realized that the living environment in his class was even worse than I had imagined. High schools like ours particularly like to form small groups. Linju has a gentle temperament, transferred to another school midway through, is a top student from a poor family, and doesn't belong to any clique. So he's often isolated. Even bullied. In this world, he has friends like me to be with. I can't imagine how lonely his life must have been in his previous life. Perhaps it was precisely because of this situation that he became particularly sensitive to even the slightest kindness. Perhaps I had only casually pulled him away from Fu Sheng, yet it had caused him to remember me for so long. I'm not afraid of second-generation rich kids like Fu Sheng. They saw me and stopped me. Jianghe, what are you doing? Are you the hero saving the damsel in distress? This doesn't match the previous script. Especially since the timing of my arrival might not have been right. The rally had ended, and the students were dispersing and heading this way. Some people noticed the commotion here and pushed open the door to peek inside. What? Why can't I remember such a grand event from back then? Fu Sheng saw the crowd gathering and grew even more excited. Jianghe, I've noticed for a long time that your relationship with him isn't normal. Are you two up to something? If it were an ordinary classmate today, I wouldn't have bullied Linju. But you did it on purpose, so be it. If you admit you like him, I'll apologize. At our school, most of us just like to gossip. What's that noise from the crowd? Who is it? It's Jianghe from class 4, and the top student in our grade. Linju stood up, grabbed my hand, his face pale. Jianghe. He smiled, forget it, don't do it. With so many classmates here, what can he do to me? Although he said that, but I couldn't resist the provocation. So what if I like Linju? I raised my voice and said, is it illegal to have a secret crush? Does our school have any rules against romance? It's not as difficult as it seems. I don't think anyone expected me to admit it so freely. In an instant, no one spoke. There wasn't even the sound of admiration for a good performance. Fu Sheng was the first to stammer, breaking the silence. Jianghe. The heroic female warrior. What are you guys doing? Gathering here to cause trouble? At that moment, an unexpected voice suddenly came from behind the crowd. This isn't even the high school graduation exam yet. Are you all just looking for a punishment as a souvenir? The crowd instinctively parted to make way. The person who arrived looked somewhat familiar. I realized something, it seemed to be the student council president. The president pointed at Fu Sheng and his gang, speaking sternly, you're about to graduate, yet you're bullying your schoolmates. Have you read the school rules? Don't you know that we strictly prohibit bullying in school? Prohibiting bullying in school is an important rule at our school. Although in reality, there are countless instances of secretly shunning weaker classmates. But none of them have escalated to the point of involving the school. This time, Fu Sheng was the one caught. The chairman pointed at each person in turn, you, and you, all follow me to the education office. After calling out the names, he turned to the person behind him and said, Pei Jian, I'll go talk to the teacher about the situation first. Are you going? At that moment, I realized that Pei Jian was accompanying the president of the student union. He was standing in the shadows, so I hadn't noticed him. Pei Jian shook his head and suddenly pointed at Linju, let Lam go. After all, he's involved, so he can explain clearly. The chairman nodded, raised his hand, and led everyone away. Fu Sheng shouted loudly, save me. I don't want to meet the education director. It's your fault. The chairman patted him on the head. The crowd saw that the main character had left, knew the show was over, and immediately dispersed. I had originally wanted to go there with Linju and wait for him outside the office. But after taking a few steps, someone suddenly grabbed my wrist. Pei Jian looked at me with a heavy expression, Jianghe, come talk to me for a moment. Only then did I notice his face was as pale as paper, his lips trembling slightly, as if suppressing some chaotic emotion. What are you doing? I whispered. He held me tightly, leaving me no room to refuse, and directly pushed me into a corner. Pei Jian was much taller than me, and now he was very close to me, the feeling of oppression was overwhelming. Jianghe. He furrowed his brows, striving to keep his voice calm. I understand that today you wanted to help Linju, but you could have called the teacher, or called me, you really didn't need to use this method. Oh, I see. He sensed that today, when I said I liked Linju, it was just a temporary strategy, my way of helping others. I burst out laughing. Pei Jian, you're wrong. I'm not helping my classmates out of kindness. I really like Linju. Hearing me say that, Pei Jian seemed to have no reaction at all. He was stunned and didn't say a word. After a long while, he looked pained, frightened, and somewhat pitiful. Suddenly, he pulled out a piece of torn letter paper from his pocket, carefully held it in his hand, showed it to me, and asked, Jianghe, are you deceiving me? Where did I go wrong? You couldn't possibly like Linju. If you liked Linju, how could you write such a letter to me? This is the love letter I wrote to Pei Jian. But I tore it up and threw it in the trash. I don't know why it ended up in Pei Jian's hands. I looked at him strangely. Pei Jian gave a slightly bitter smile and admitted without hesitation, that's right, I picked it up from the trash can. I admit that at the time, I wasn't sure how much I liked you, and I was afraid that a high school romance would affect my studies. But I never thought, Jianghe, that you would like someone else. When I saw the love letter, I actually felt a sense of relief. My one-sided love for Pei Jian ending this way was for the best. I snatched the paper from his hand, tore it into pieces, then opened the window behind me and casually threw it out. The paper fragments flew away with the wind, never to be pieced back together again. Pei Jian's expression changed, and he hurriedly ran to the window, his hands gripping the window frame. Half of his body was leaning out of the window, and he gritted his teeth and said, Jianghe, you. Pei Jian, ever since I threw away the love letter, you must have known that I no longer like you. From now on, unless it's something important, don't come looking for me anymore. Just like you said, we all have to take the high school graduation exam, we all have to study, right? The next day, as soon as I entered the classroom, I felt that all my classmates were looking at me. I acted normally, didn't blush, didn't panic, sat down at my desk, opened my book, and started reading. But it was already time for self-study. Why wasn't Linju here yet? I gently tapped my deskmate's hand and asked her, where's Linju? My deskmate mockingly looked at me and said, you don't know? Because you caused a scene yesterday, Fu Shang was caught by the school for bullying, and he'll be publicly reprimanded this morning. Linju, probably because of this, is now with the teacher. As we were talking, the loudspeaker in the classroom sounded. The principal's voice rang out. This time, a very serious case of bullying occurred in the school, causing a severe impact. The students involved must conduct a thorough self-criticism. Fu Sheng and his accomplices looked like eggplants hit by frost, completely losing their usual arrogant attitude. A chorus of sorry-sounding apologies followed. The classmates in the class all lowered their heads and laughed. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. The head of education asked Linju if he would accept the apology from these people. Linju replied calmly, actually, I've never paid any attention to them. They're not on the same level as me. Even if they're brave and enjoy group activities, so what? I couldn't help but clap my hands under the table to praise him. But the next moment, he directly mentioned me. Jianghe, I've always felt that confessing my feelings is something I should do. I like you. I was completely speechless. My deskmate spit out a mouthful of water. She glared at me, all right, the two of you, in front of us, all the teachers and students, you're just feeding the dogs. The consequence was that I and Linju each had to write a self-criticism. But the two of us could confidently hold hands and walk around the schoolyard. Though early love might not be good for studies, my boyfriend was the top student in the class. Such a big advantage couldn't be wasted. Difficult science topics seemed to come alive thanks to Linju's companionship and explanations. The entire semester after high school seemed to become less arduous. Time flew by quickly. But Pei Jian, I suddenly realized that I hadn't paid attention to him in a long time. He no longer stayed in the classroom on Friday afternoons. Even when he encountered me and Linju on campus, he would lower his eyes and quickly walk past. It was as if he was truly following my words and would never bother me again. When the university entrance exam results came out, I was at the internet cafe, dragging Linju along, teaching him how to wipe out the enemies. Suddenly, the classroom erupted. Someone shouted, "Help! The university entrance exam results are here." Linju and I immediately left the internet cafe, grabbed our phones, and entered our registration numbers. My score was quickly announced. It was 30 to 40 points higher than my usual level, far exceeding the norm. I excitedly shouted, then turned to look at Linju's phone screen. Something was wrong with his results. It seemed pretty bad. The screen displayed 0 points. My hands were shaking as I whispered to him, "How is that possible? Did you forget to write your name or did you mark the wrong number on the exam paper?" Linju shook his head. His finger slowly moved to a small line of text below the screen. "Your ranking has entered the top 50 in the province. Please check the details in the coming days." I let out a gasp and hugged Linju. The guy playing games next to us took off his headphones and looked at us in confusion. "How many people did you kill to get so excited?" My face turned red, and I whispered, "Classmate Linju, which university do you want to apply to?" Linju smiled and ruffled my hair. "We'll discuss it together." Later, the renowned university in the south awarded Linju a full scholarship and allowed him to choose any major he wanted. I was admitted to the teacher training college next door. Everything seemed to be going according to plan. Except for Pei Jian. The day before the deadline for submitting applications, I suddenly received a call from Mr. Pei Jian. "Jianghe, could you help me out a bit? Could you talk to Pei Jian and convince him to follow the original plan and apply to University A?" University A was Pei Jian's original admission target. At that moment, I realized he hadn't met the admission scores for the top national business schools. But if University A added 60 points for him, he could still achieve his original goal. To be honest, I had no idea why Mr. Pei called me. First, facing this kind of issue, University A is the top university in the country. What is Pei Jian hesitating about? I simply don't understand. Second, as an outsider, what advice could I possibly give him? But Mr. Pei is an elder, and I find it hard to refuse his request. So after the call, I immediately dialed Pei Jian's mobile number. It rang for a long time before he answered. After hesitating for a moment, I asked, "Pei Jian, haven't you decided which university to apply to yet?" Pei Jian's voice sounded tired. "No." In an instant, I even felt a sense of regret that he hadn't made the most of his potential. "Is your head filled with water? What are you thinking? If you don't go to University A, where will you go? Given your abilities, wouldn't you feel regretful if you ended up at an ordinary key university?" I didn't know if I had spoken too harshly. But at one point, Pei Jian didn't respond to me. After a long time, he slowly said, "Jianghe, I'm afraid that if we're too far apart, you'll forget me. Jianghe, I also want to go to college with you in the same city." So, he really thought that way. But Pei Jian, it's not necessary, really not necessary. I said in a cold tone, "Pei Jian, if you do that, I'll look down on you. Do you want us not to even be ordinary friends?" Pei Jian went to University A. He Meng passed the exam smoothly and was admitted to the dance academy in the same northern city. I and Linju passed the regular exams in the south. Everyone's results were very satisfactory. There were no car accidents, no painful injuries, and no explosions in the future. The relationship between our three families remained very good. We had a few days of class parties together, and the parents even said they wanted to go to the airport with us and fly to school. At the airport terminal, I and Linju were on the same flight, while Pei Jian and He Meng were on another flight. One heading south, one heading north. We finally bid farewell at the ticket gate. I pulled Linju's arm and handed him his backpack. He Meng also wanted to touch Pei Jian's hand, but he didn't change his expression and pulled away, seeming indifferent and distant. He looked at me, opened his mouth, but in the end said nothing. I waved goodbye to them. "Goodbye. Perhaps it will be a very long time before we meet again. The end.